So if you look to the very south, the Senari Isles down here, the Bay of the Southern Moon, they're called the Ashwind Isles as part of the Boiling Sea. There's lots of little landmarks and points of geography on here we can use to identify it. The Senari capital is here in what's called the City of Brass. Don't confuse this for the City of Brass in the elemental plane of fire. It is not that. It is its own City of Brass. So there you go. But the Crimson King rules over the Senari people with an iron fist, more or less where they came from. And there's more about the Crimson King in the Avatar episode, so I'm not going to go super far into him right now, at least as far as him as an avatar. But what I will say about him as a ruler over the Senari Isles is that he and his people came here from exile about 2.5 Senari generations ago, right? When he left pretty much with just his most fervent followers. They were exiled from their homeland he started a revolution there. How about that? So a couple generations of Senari now have come and gone, and people are starting to question the divinity of the Crimson King. They're seeing all of these other avatars around Atheros and like, hey, they're powerful. Is the Crimson King really all powerful? So the Crimson King, as far as his political rulership, it has always been a very tightly controlled aristocracy and magocracy all at the same time. So the Crimson King is advised by very powerful magicians and wizards whom he has shown how to do their magic, right? Like, they know their magic because he's shown them how to do it. And he has them continue to study different aspects of magical theory so that they can then, in turn, teach new things to him. And they have at their disposal the levers of state in order to make these experiments happen, right? Of course, it goes without saying that you run the state as a part of this responsibility, right? Okay, so if your job is to, if you're looking into, how aquatic magic and how it affects this and that, how magic is affected underwater, right? Or how water spells are affected when you do this or that to them. Oh, what do we do when we change the shape of the component for this? Or when we change the concentration of this? When we use seawater instead of fresh water, etc. The person, the matriarch, that's it, or the autoarch, I should say, who's in charge of that. Of course, they're in charge of the magical research, but then they would also likely be in charge of other things in the city that have to do with water as well. So procuring fresh water for the city, setting up aqueducts, and other things along those lines. There's sometimes areas where responsibilities overlap, and the autoarchs do everything that they can to secure every little scrap of political power they can for themselves, at the same time without showing their hand. Because the moment that your enemy sees what you're trying to do, they're able to better outpredict you, and they have that power over you. So there's always kind of like a layer of political obfuscation to what they're doing, but generally the autoarchs take their spheres of influence very seriously. And again, it goes without saying that, of course, I would do this. How could I be an effective servant to the Crimson King in this sphere if we weren't anything but the best in this? So there is a great deal of pride, I guess, that goes along with being a Senari. It's in a similar vein to the Imperial pride. And that, we are the best, we do the best, and we try the best because we work for the best. We work for the Crimson King. And as far as they're concerned anyways, he is the preeminent magician in all the things that they study. What sort of things do they study? Well, they study shadow magic, they study void magic, they study blood magic, like any kind of magic that you might think to yourself, that seems like it might be kind of evil. They pretty much study that. I mean, the Crimson King is not a great guy. As a matter of state policy, they do endorse slavery, but they do it very, very quietly. Like, despite the fact that they are a slave-friendly nation, they don't go out and raid people to take slaves, right? They just do it economically, or they have indentured servants, or they buy people, you know? Like, it's not like with the Empire, where they're raiding the Horseshoe Plains on horseback and grabbing people in nets, or in the Abhan rainforest. We'll get to this in a bit. Or you have the servant people, you know, like grabbing all the Eastrons that they can find and clearing out whole villages and enslaving them. Although they've more recently turned to undead slavery. But it's not like that. Like they're not going to your great uncle's farm and enslaving all of his hands, you know. Like they're buying their slaves, or it's a system of indentured servitude. Well, this person owes me a favor that they couldn't possibly hope to pay back. They died in these unforeseen circumstances while they were doing this job for me, and well, of course I want them to be alive. I feel for their families, so I paid the resurrection fee, but such a thing is so steep, I guess they owe me quite a favor for a long time, unless, you know, you could just talk to your family and maybe they'd be willing to make that sacrifice. But the money's already been paid, so I don't really see the point in it. Like, it's a very extractionary system, right? It's a system of obligations, as opposed to aggressive dominance. I bonk you in the head, and I'm going to beat you up if you don't do what I say. No, that's not their style. We've got you, and we're going to torture you and murder your family if you don't do what we say. No, that's not their style. Their style is to entrap people with their own desires, with their own decisions. I mean, not necessarily in a fiendish and evil and plotting sort of way, but definitely in a fiendish and evil and plotting sort of way. I'd say there's a little bit of a line, though, between what they do and what the Maquis do, right? The Maquis do it just for kicks, just to watch evil people do evil things. The senari are doing it for the betterment of their people, for the Crimson King, more or less. And yeah, he, as far as rulers, like that's I think pretty good. The beacon there, you can see the beacon on the map. That has yet to be built. That's yet to happen. That's going to happen in the next 15 years. But more or less, a volcano appears there and a large beacon appears. This is part of the Endbringer saga and what's going on there. But the Crimson King and the senari people basically claim it for him as a religious site. They say this is a symbolic representation of the Crimson King's power, this new island rising from the sea. Because before this, that big island wasn't even there. See where it says like ruins of Vadis, and there's that big island and beacon? The whole island wasn't even there. It's not there on the map right now. If you were to crack open a map of Atheros right now in the bazaar, island wouldn't even be there. You'd say, where's the island? And people would look at you like you're crazy if they're a cartographer and they know what's going on. That will happen, though, in the near future, and the Crimson King will use it as an excuse to flex, I guess, to flex his church and say, yeah, look how great I am. So that's the rulership of the City of Brass. It's pretty much ruled over by the Crimson King and his autoarchs, a aristocratic magocracy, who oversee different spheres of the city and have basically unquestioned control within that sphere. You want to know who has the real power besides the Crimson King and the Senari Isles? It's the autoarchs in charge of researching the blood magic. Because, like, again, where are they getting that blood? They have unquestioned authority to do whatever they want. It's PG-13 server, so we don't need to go too deep into that, but 1 + 1 = 2, right?